What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Till Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, just like we are each and every single week at 5:30 or thereabouts, depending on what is going on. Sometimes the Mets games are going to run late. Not the case for this particular time, or I think anytime this season, because games are over in 45 minutes now, which is exactly how Jon Heyman wants it. If you're watching us live on YouTube, it is the best way to interact with the show. Your comments, your questions, everything comes in real time, and the comments are lighting up already. Folks saying hello to each other, folks saying hello to us, people like James Dowling saying, oh boy, this is going to be a good episode. John Sapanaro holding it down in sunny, finally, warm, finally, Los Angeles, California. My co-host back in New Jersey, Matt Ibby Ibanez. Ibby, I know it has not gone our Mets' way the last few days, but how you feeling?
John, I'm feeling okay. Obviously, I put into the chat before one of my girls is dealing with a little bit of fever right now, so the house is a little bit hectic at the moment. But in terms of our Mets and everything that's gone on, look, I was so pumped up in the beginning of the week, thinking, the first 4 games we were doing great. We could talk about the pen, we could talk about this, we could talk about that. And then the Brewer series happened, and freaking Brian Anderson happened. I didn't even know who that. The fact that we got destroyed by that guy. And then all the rookies are hitting. And then as I see my buddy James Rube is in the comments, we were talking before saying how, these Brewers young kids can hit. Maybe the Mets should take a lesson and let their young kids come up and hit. But other than that, I'm level-headed. I've stayed off of Twitter the last 2 days. I feel good. I feel refreshed. So that's a good thing. So let's do what we do, John, and that's bring some level-headedness to this entire thing. I'm assuming you're going to be level-headed. Granted, sometimes you can run a little bit hot, but I'm assuming you're going to be level-headed.
The season is over! The season is over! No, I'm just kidding.
Let's have a conversation. Let's do it.
Look, I just got to say to everybody who is listening, everybody who is watching, everybody on Twitter, calm the fuck down.
Please.
It's been 7 games. Last I checked, all the rules that Major League Baseball has changed. Ibby, I think there's still 162 games in a season, right? I think that's how this works. 162 of these things. You cannot conceivably survive if you die and live and die by every single loss on a Wednesday afternoon in Milwaukee in April. Look, yeah. I understand. Look, I got it, the jersey behind me. If I full screen myself, you'll see I got Mets artwork. I got Mets hats. I got other things you can't even see all over my apartment, okay? I live and die by this team, but you simply cannot lose your mind over a 3-game series. Chris Ferraro is the second comment I'm going to bring up. 6 games, just over 1% of the season. So I look, it's been bad. I got a list of concerns I want to talk about too. I'm not saying that there's no reason to raise an eyebrow based on some of the things we saw last season that have kind of reared their ugly head this season, but I think that sometimes you need to understand, and I know all 162 matter and all that stuff, but when the Mets didn't lose a series, Ibby, until July last year?
Yes.
Something crazy like that. Hot. Right? The Mets didn't get swept until somewhere around that same point, right?
Correct.
And James Dowling brings it up. The Braves had a bad first month and then won the division. You look at all of that stuff, and I don't understand how you could sit here and say, oh my God, what are we going to do? Everything's fucked. The whole thing, tear it all down. Cohen sucks. Scherzer's cooked. The team is terrible. I can't subscribe to that. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I won't.
Just these last couple of days, and this is why I turned off Twitter, because last year was so taxing because, I try my best to help build the socials and help build our following. Also, and it's you're
and then I try my best to tear down all your hard work by being a prick to most people. That's what we do. It's a give and take.
No, but like just doing that as constantly as I was doing last season, and then seeing how every single thing was living and dying, literally dying the 50 something times that the team lost a game. It was like, this is ridiculous. The world is not ending yet. Here we are 7 games in, and these last 3 days, I have to look at tweets from people that I even respect, and I'm not going to drop names because there's no need to, but I'm seeing these people put out tweets about, oh my God, I know it's only, like, they prefaced it by saying, I know it's only 6 games in, or I know it's a short thing, but, and then of course after that, but it's like something completely ridiculous about.
It'd be like, I know it's only 6 games, but where's the highest building in my neighborhood? Like, that's like, and you're like,
please calm down. And I know we say it as well, like, all games matter. We get it. But at the same time, it's like, we said this last year. It still applies now. You play 162. This isn't a football season. Okay. You're going to have, I still think one of your best things that you've said on this show was think of the season as 60 and 60. And then you try to finish out the rest, like, and I think that that's proper. And I think that's where anyone would really think about being. Look, is it the start that we wanted? No. Slow start. And no one's, you can be unhappy. I'm not saying you can't be unhappy or like you can have your concerns. You have yours. I'll put mine out too.
Didn't the Mets start 10-1 under Mickey Callaway that one season and then, then not even make the playoffs? They had like a 15 game lead after the first month and they didn't even make the play. Like, is that you want that instead? Is that what people want? Like, I don't know what people want. It's like for me, it's the people saying stuff like all offseason, winning 101 games doesn't matter. Okay. Well, winning 101 games doesn't matter. But then I come out and I say, well, you have to give them credit for winning 101 games. But also I acknowledge, like, you could win 85 games and win the World Series. I want to win the World Series, but it doesn't mean that you turn around and you shit on the 101 wins. So for all those people, they're like, oh, no, but I'd rather win 82 games, just make it into the playoffs and win the World Series. Okay, so then what are you complaining about today? The season ended today? Where are we with this?
Right. It's too much. I can't. And this is why I'm becoming more and more comfortable with just tuning things out. As much as I want to continue to help build the show, there are just sometimes it's like, I don't want to be around the negativity of everything that people are bringing in with this. You can be upset. You can be worried about some things here and there. Look, we got some good news that we'll talk about when it comes to Verlander or Beatty or things like that. Like, just relax. I know it's impossible for Mets fans to do that. And every time I say it, like, I say these things often, like I'll tweet something out and then people like try to correct me, like, you do realize that this is Twitter and this is like, no, I know exactly what it is. I'm just saying, calm the fuck down. Like, I know what it is. I'm just telling you, shut the hell up and calm down.
There was some dude who, like, I must have gotten into it in December of last year about how, hey, this team is good. And he like screen grabbed it and then retweeted it at me this morning after the Mets lose 19-0. And I'm like, yo, and you waited 4 months to talk shit to me on game 7 of the season, not game 7 of the World Series, game 7 of the year. And he's like, how about this? And I'm like, dude, I just responded. I gave him the Thanos meme. I don't even know who you are. I remember all the people I get into arguments with on Twitter. You think I remember you? I don't.
To defend John on this one, he was going at it with someone who I had known blocked me a long time ago because of a Mets rant. He didn't like what I said or whatever. He blocked me. And I saw John getting into it with this guy as well. I texted John on the side while he was doing it. And he goes, who the hell are you talking about? I go, what do you mean who am I talking about? The guy you're literally going back and forth with right now. He's like,
you're gonna have to be more specific.
You're gonna be more specific. Like, are you kidding me? The idiot you're talking with right now. So it's spot on with what he just said.
Let's jump back into the comments real quick. Shay saying, please follow and subscribe. Please. That
you,
is
Chick.
just,
Good
I'm just
job.
bringing that up because I was going to bring it up anyway. If you like our rants and our stupidity, hit the thumbs up button, follow, subscribe, turn notifications on so that you never, ever, ever miss an episode.
Get out of here, Ant. Get out of here, Ant, with this nonsense.
As Ant Subway to Shea, frequent guest on the show, and also his own great podcast, Subway to Shea, says, I know the season just started, but are you sure the world's not ending, Ibby? The Mets aren't supposed to win every single night, asking for a friend. Chris Ferraro saying clueless Mickey still talks about winning 11-1. He absolutely does.
I'm sure that's his opening line when he's selling a house. I'm pretty sure.
Oh my God. Like every failed person in baseball, he now works in real estate. That's
where the money is, man.
James, I believe I'm saying this right. James Rube, if I'm not saying that right.
Rube, yeah.
When I was saying calm down, he says, I don't want to. Fuck. And then he says, does John want my ticket? I believe he means for tomorrow. I definitely don't want Tucker for tomorrow. Maybe that's your son. I don't want to babysit if that's your friend. I think he means ticket. I live in California, but if you want to give me an opening day ticket for free, I can catch a red eye. I'll be there tomorrow morning. I promise. I would actually. That said, Ibby, look, there are some things we can talk about for the people who are in the chat. And it seems like everybody so far is kind of vibing with us that it's early. But I did say there are some things. Yeah, smart people, because our listeners are smart. Yes, our viewers are smart. There are some things, though, that I am concerned about, but I want to start with the things that I'm not concerned about, okay? Even if they're going badly. The first thing I want to bring up with you, it's kind of twofold, but we'll lead into it this way. Max Scherzer, that's not good. Okay,
no,
12 hits in just under 12 innings, 8 earned runs, 4 home runs. Only the second time in his career he's given up back-to-back-to-backs. That is the second highest ERA he's ever had to start a season. Yeah, okay. I'm not worried, dude. He's Max Scherzer. He looked lights out in spring training. Sometimes, and people forget this, sometimes, Ibby, in Max Scherzer's career, he has a penchant for giving up home runs. And basically all of those earned runs that you see on there came via the home run. Sometimes he's going to give up home runs. Why? Because he throws a lot of breaking pitches and he lives in the strike zone. And sometimes guys are going to hit those balls hard. So I'm not worried about Max Scherzer. You?
No, I'm not worried. Like the one alarming thing, but like you just say, you just covered it as well. It's the home runs. And the one that I had was shout out to Michael Mayer. Max Scherzer has allowed 10 home runs in his last 4 starts going back to 2022. Like, yeah, but you brought up the numbers. That was his worst start to a season since 2012, which was a 10.38 ERA to start. So, look, am I worried? No. Am I going to jump on everyone who's going to say that the guy's washed like they did last night? Did he have a good start last night? No, he didn't. It was like a home run derby last night. It happened, whatever. Like, you move on. Like, he's a competitor. He's going to work to get back to where he wants to be. Let's not make it seem like this guy didn't have an extremely low ERA last year. I know last year is last year. I'm not trying to use that as a scapegoat, really, but I'm just saying that this is a guy that works hard and is going to work his way back down when it comes to that ERA. So, no, I'm not worried about it. I'm more worried about other things, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But when it comes to Max Scherzer, not so much.
James Dowling and Ant Rivera are both saying tomorrow is postponed already. I think I saw. And then Subway to Shea, Ant is saying home opener is postponed till Friday. The source, Anthony DiComo. So I guess going to be bad weather tomorrow. So if you still want to give me the ticket, that gives me even more time to get into town. I can make it happen. I'm probably not going to fly to New York to go to the home opener, but that is a bummer. I didn't see that. It must have been, I don't know, like right before I signed on to do this show. That said, Ibby, let's branch out a little bit. I'm also not worried about the rotation. That's where I said it's twofold for me. I'm not worried about the rotation because Max is Max. When Verlander comes back, and we got good news on him today, inflammation is down. He's going to continue throwing. I think he's going to be back soon. I'm not worried about Verlander. I don't care that the guys are 40 years old. I'm just not worried about them. Verlander had like the best ERA in his career last year. I'm not concerned. Now, I understand that there's Quintana, and he's going to be out till July. I understand Peterson didn't look great today. I know that there's some issues. You know, what do we have in McGill? What kind of pitcher is he? Like, you don't want to have the kind of injuries that the Mets are having to pitching right now from the starting pitching into the bullpen. I acknowledge that that's bad. but I'm not worried about the rotation overall. I'm not.
No. I mean, in terms of like again, it's not the start that we wanted. I'm not worried. So like the only thing I'm really worried about with the rotation at the moment, and again, very early, it's just we talked about this during the offseason as well. And that was the again, I'm not expecting everyone at this age to be going 6, or I should say 7, 8 complete game. Like, but we have to try and get a little bit more length out of the stars. Like that's the only thing that I want to, that I hope that gets established and readied, like put back on the right track moving forward. Because I'm telling you, as much as I liked what I saw in the first series from the Pen, a little bit shaky in the second series with the Brewers, but the more you go into that pen, it's going to tax it and tax it. And based off of the injuries, it's just like we're rolling guys out that shouldn't be being rolled out even at the moment. It's like you don't want to just keep attacking a bare cupboard because it's going to just lead to bad things, when it starts really getting serious into the dog days of summer and making a push for the playoffs, things like that. Like that's the only thing that I'm worried about. But again, it's early, and I'm hoping that over the next couple of weeks that those things can be put back on track.
James Rube saying, I'm worried about Cookie, and then follows it up by saying, velo down, look gassed, struggled with the pitch clock. I would agree with that. I honestly,
Cookie
I would
looked
agree.
Rough. He did.
I would agree with a lot of that. I think the reason why I'm not worried about Cookie yet is because it's been one start. Let's see where he goes. And then again, let's see what happens when Verlander gets back. And then eventually when Quintana gets back in the rotation. I think the Mets have the horses to cover for Cookie. I think right now the Mets are married to Carrasco in the rotation for better or for worse. And look, he's going to have to go out there and pitch, even if his velocity is down, because the Mets don't have a lot of other options right now. But Ibby, I think over the course of the season, I'm not worried about Carrasco, because if Carrasco doesn't have it, I think the Mets have alternatives. Right now, yeah, I could see the little bit of concern for Carrasco. I can.
Yeah, it's look, it was a bad start. Like it wasn't there, and the velo is a big concern, but you're hoping that it's just something that he's struggling with now, as he better assimilates, if you will, with the pitch clock and things like that. Hopefully it can be a little bit better moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I've always felt that Cookie might have been the guy. Like everyone always talked about, about the back end. I always felt like Cookie was the guy that if Peterson and McGill were able to really show out at certain points of the season, I felt that Cookie, if he was the one that was struggling, would be the one that's kind of, bumped out, if you will, or skipped a couple of times. He always fit that bill there for me. But hopefully, moving forward, he can wake up a little bit, have a better showing his next time out.
And the other reason why I'm not super concerned about the rotation is because everybody keeps talking about the 240-year-olds at the top of it, despite the fact that they have an unbelievable track record and they've shown literally no signs of not being the same kind of pitchers that they've been over the course of their career. The other reason why I'm not worried, Ibby, is this guy right here, Kodai Senga. I loved the Senga signing. You loved it. A lot of fans loved it. Everybody who watches this loved it. But, he came out, and after a little bit of a bumpy road to start where he admitted he was really geeked up, he showed you the kind of stuff that he has. He throws hard. All 8 of those strikeouts came on the ghost forkball, which was completely unhittable. He was making people look foolish. I think Yuli Gurriel lost his bat twice trying to square up those balls on strikeouts. So, I look and I see a guy who is 30 years old, who knows how to pitch, who really can be an anchor for this rotation, not only this season in the 3 spot, as he continues to learn the major leagues and baseball in America from 2 guys like Verlander and Scherzer and others, Jeremy Hefner, great pitching coach, all this stuff. I think he can be an anchor for the rotation going forward. You know what I mean? So I look at him as a potential number 2 in a year or 2. So I look at this and I don't see this doom and gloom. Like, I understand that Verlander's not here right now, and that sucks. I understand that Scherzer hasn't been Scherzer, and that sucks. And going back to last year, the last start that we saw Scherzer in against the Padres in the playoffs wasn't good. I get it. But I'm still not worried. I'm not. Maybe individual pieces, and like you said, little bit more depth. I would like them to go, at least into the 6th inning. I think you need to expect that because it will bring us to a point about the bullpen that we'll make in a little bit. But, I don't know, man. I know it's just one start from Senga, but I like what I see. He's a guy who knows how to pitch. It's clear.
Yeah, the one thing that I loved about, and I wasn't able to watch him like from a visual perspective on his first start. I was listening on the radio because I was doing some work outside and stuff. But I love the fact that he was able to really work through that first inning. That first inning was rough for him. He sat down for a while as well because the offense was really working the Marlins staff, and they were getting base runners on it. So he was sitting for a while. So he comes out, he handles business, he gets put into a tough spot, he works out of it, limited to no damage. Like when I see something like that, and then he goes on to have, I think he had like 33 pitches in the first inning or 35 pitches in the first inning. Then he goes on and he has 27 pitches over the next 3 innings. It's like, that's what I like. Seeing a guy do that shows me that he has the wherewithal to work through trouble. Look, he's going to have his ups and downs. We get that. But when you show that type of mettle in the beginning to start, your first start in the bigs, like I love seeing that. And the Ghost Fork, we talked about the fact that, yes, it's a split finger fastball. It's what it is. But he clearly has something that batters, at least his first go around, are going to struggle with, which is why we said it can legit be a strikeout pitch, which it proved to be that first start where he has 8 strikeouts over 5 innings. That's great. If that could be the consistency of him, phenomenal. I will gladly take that. But yeah, overall, from what I saw from him, I loved what I saw, and I want him to build on that and get better so we can, I always think the one thing we have to worry about him coming over was the walk rate and, just trying to limit those overall pitches that he's going to throw because of the potential fear that they had, which is what they worked into the contract when it came to his arm and his elbow, things like that. So that's really the point where you don't want him to, really overextend. But from what I saw, yeah, I'm in. Like, I'm all in on him. Let's go. I like
and
it.
we're going to get some early returns because he's going to pitch in the homestand in a couple days against the same team that he just faced.
Right.
And we're going to see if, the early returns are, can he befuddle people who have seen the Ghost Forkball and have seen the Ghost Forkball a week ago? You know what I mean? That's what it's going to really come down to. So we'll get some early returns on that. Jump back into the comments here for a second. Stevie Mack saying, we need the whole team to shave their facial hair off just like Pete so that they hit better. I am going to say some people need facial hair, like Guillorme has no business shaving his beard, and Escobar needs to grow his facial hair back. I think it's just a little bit of a mix. I think some people, I think Pete's mustache was, in a word, Ibby, pathetic. It looked really bad. It's the second worst.
Creepy.
No, it's the second worst mustache I've seen this week. The first, that title goes to Vince McMahon, former owner of the WWE. He no longer owns it. He sold it to somebody. I don't know.
He's
now
still in
UFC,
control, though. He's still in
control. He's going to be in control until he dies, and that's a fact.
And
then Shay saying, slight worry. We have a brutal flight schedule and we'll continue to have a brutal flight schedule the rest of April. MLB did us no favors with the start times. We've been flat on series day ones with that. That is the creepiest picture I have ever seen. Vince McMahon, if you hold that up one more time, maybe. I know this isn't a wrestling podcast. I don't care. Vince McMahon looks like someone cut off Vince McMahon's face and turned it into an ill-fitting mask. He looks like Vincent D'Onofrio in Men in Black, like he's wearing an Edgar suit. That's what he looks like. He looks like my God, that is
he looks
terrifying.
He looks like a poor man's version of like Walt Disney. Like it's too much.
Oh my God, he does look like
he kind of does. He looks like Walt Disney a little, but the thing with Vince is and I'm a big wrestling guy still, but the thing with Vince is he's always made fun of people and said that nobody wants to see you because you look old. So when he obviously knew he was going to be front and center on CNBC and all this stuff, and he decided, I'm going to just dye everything jet black and grow a mustache and do all these things to make it seem like I'm a little bit younger, and also take away from the other things that he's been, mixed up in. So they talk about his stupid mustache as opposed to the things that they should be talking about. But that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to the Mets.
To catch a predator, Vince McMahon from Shay. That has many meanings. The mustache, not the only one, but yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Ibby, let's flip the script here and talk about something that I am a little worried about. and get your take on it.
Mhm.
Everything we just talked about in the starting rotation and the pitchers in general,
Yes.
I'm a little worried about the bullpen. Now, going into the season, the last 2 episodes before the season started, I said, hey, the Edwin Diaz injury is something that the Mets can overcome. You're only going to get out of a closer, even the best closer in baseball, 4 to 5 WAR, maybe 70 games pitched if you're lucky. Obviously, that gives the Mets a big advantage because of how excellent he's been and how elite his stuff is, and it pushes everybody down the totem pole a little bit. I am not going back on that. Then last week, you and I both said the Mets still have the makings of a very good bullpen with David Robertson at the back end. People can go back and listen to why, how he's been there and done that, how he still has very good stuff. He knows how to get outs in the playoffs, in the World Series, in New York. The list goes on. However, to your point from earlier, if the starters are not going to go deeper into these games, the underbelly of this bullpen, as currently constructed, is not good.
No.
Period.
No.
It is bad. John Curtis looks very good. Seems like the Mets were super smart for giving him that 2-year deal last year when he was recovering from Tommy John. I think he's going to be a big part of this bullpen. Drew Smith has become the Drew Smith of old, where you can't trust him. He basically gave up the game there on a spot where he goes to his third pitch on the changeup when, I would have thrown anything else to Jesse Winker other than an 84-mile-an-hour flat pitch in the middle of the zone. Then you look at some of the other guys, the Denny Santana, right? Is that Denny Reyes?
Dennis Santana. Oh, that's 2 different people. You have Dennis Santana. You have Denny Denyi Reyes. That was the one they just called up because of all the injuries, and they showed up in the game yesterday.
Correct. So, excuse me. So, Denny Reyes, who's just a journeyman, call-up, whatever. Dennis Santana has really good stuff, but a really bad resume when you look at what he's done in the major leagues. You're starting to get – and then if a guy like Brooks Raley, who's got a good arm and is going to be counted on – I know it's only one bad game, but if he's going to give it up, Ibby, the way that he gave it up, now you've got a bullpen of 2 people, again, maybe 3 people with Ottavino, Robertson, and Curtis. And that's not going to get it done. No. So, there are, for me, empty spaces in this bullpen. Let's put it that way.
And the injuries have not been kind. Tommy Hunter goes down. Guys down low got hurt. Obviously, we lost Montes de Oca for the year. Like, it can get ugly very fast. And when and like you said, like when you're relying on the Nogosics of the world and you're relying too much on the likes of Santana and Reyes, and if you bring back, say, like a McFarland, or like you're bringing all these guys, it's like you're going to end up overworking the Rayleys and the Ottavinos and the Robertsons, and like it's not a recipe for success. So that's why it's so important to get a little bit more length out of these starters. Now, look, that's going to be dependent. Like and this is what comes with the territory when it comes to age and things like that. But that's really going to be dependent on, can these guys like I brought up David Peterson at the start when it came to bold predictions, and I said this is a guy that needs to go out and really show out and prove his worth, and I thought he could. And today didn't happen today. Like he pitched 3 1/3. Did he go 4? I don't even know. But either way, it's not enough.
It was 3 1/3, yeah.
So like it wasn't enough. So it's like in this game, even though you're against Corbin Burns, I was like, Peterson's got to go at least 6 today. It's got to happen, and it did, and it didn't. Like that's something that needs to happen because you overwork a pen on the back end of a series that you already lost the series, and then it didn't go proper at all. So yes, the bullpen is in a very precarious position right now, at least early, but right now, because if we don't remedy some of these things over the next couple of weeks, then it can turn ugly.
And it brings me back. I mean, we talked about why the Mets, look, it's old news and it's over and it's done with and it's dead and gone and buried, right? But why the Mets didn't go after Andrew Chafin, why the Mets didn't go to some of these other guys who, wound up signing deals where you could get them for a year or 2. And, I understand they had a lot of live arms that they really liked younger kids, things like that. But like all of a sudden, you lose Diaz for the year. You lose an high upside arm like Montez Dioca for the year. And now you got, Danny Reyes. And I don't think that's a recipe for success. I think they needed to cover themselves more. And I think they probably should have. And I think, gun to his head, Billy Epper will tell you that he probably should have gotten at least one more arm in the offseason. Shea saying, I'm worried about Buck's use of the bullpen over managing, and Patty and NYC following it up by saying, is Buck trying out the entire bullpen to see who he wants? I don't know. That for me was the most curious thing. Look, the game could have ended the same way regardless, but it was very strange to see Buck bring in Robertson in the 8th inning. He throws 9 pitches. He doesn't go back to him, which is fair. He only pitched 2 innings, I think, like 2 or 3 times all of last season. It's not something he does at this stage in his career, usually. But then he goes to Ottavino in the 9th, who's been very good. But Ottavino, when he throws that slider, if it's a wipeout, it's a wipeout. If he hangs it, he's going to give up a home run. And you go Robertson to the bottom of the order, Ottavino to the middle of the order.
Right. And
then Buck's explanation for it in the postgame was, well, it's a long season. You can't pitch these guys every day.
Right.
But Ottavino pitched yesterday. And if Ottavino was going to pitch today, I would have just put him out there in the 8th.
Right.
And then bring in Robertson. And then if you have to pitch Robertson tomorrow, which at the time the game wasn't canceled yet, well, you figure out tomorrow. Like they had to use them anyway. There was nowhere else for them to go. So in a way, the rainout is a godsend because I think now the whole bullpen's basically going to be available. But I didn't understand why they would go that route. And look, Ottavino's a guy who's closed out games before, certainly not with the resume of Robertson. I know they said it was going to be a little bit of closer by committee until one guy took the role. To me, that is a little bit of overmanaging. It's certainly overthinking it. Give Robertson the ball in the 9th every time.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that, like he says that in the post game. Now, is it them looking at numbers? Is it based off of numbers for guys against them over the course?
Sorry to interrupt, but on the broadcast, so on the broadcast, Gary Cohen speculated the same thing, and then he kind of looked. He must have the numbers in front of him, or the producer gave it to him. He's like, well, nothing jumps out. Like there were no matchups of like, oh wow, like Ottavino should not face these guys. Doesn't matter if it's 7, 8, or 9 or whatever. There was nothing there that you would say, okay, that's the logic.
It seems as though like we here, when we were talking about it, it seemed like we were very much dead set on the idea that, look, the experience of a closer is in Robertson's corner. So we figured once the Diaz thing happened, Robertson's the guy. Like that's going to be the guy who's going to be closing out games. The Mets seemed to come across as though they were going to really look at this as a true committee, and they're going to pitch guys in a certain way that they think fits proper. And they went with a way that not a lot of people agreed with today, and it came back and bit them. It didn't work. So it doesn't bode well for them when everyone sees something as one way and then they go the opposite and then it fails. Well, then you're really going to hear it, because the first question asked to Buck in that post game was, Buck, why'd you go to Robertson in the 8th and Ottavino in the 9th and not the other way around?
And respectfully, if the Mets win that game, we're still talking about this, because I think the thought process is flawed. I really do. Now, if this happens midweek and the Mets win the game and we're not recording until next week, if this happens on Friday and we don't record until the following Wednesday and the Mets win the game, I don't think this comes back up, right? But when we record immediately after the game, I was going to bring this up to you either way because I just thought it was weird. And Shea follows it up by saying Robertson versus 7, 8, and 9, Ottavino versus 1, 2, and 3 is weird. It is weird. I think it's a strange course of action, honestly. I don't get the logic. I really didn't.
Yeah, especially when you saw in certain spots, if it was like we saw last year with how he utilized Diaz, and he would attack his best reliever against the better part of a lineup. And if that meant in the 8th, then he would pitch Diaz in the 8th just to get out of a certain spot. So it's very curious here why you would go with the lesser, if you will, based off of, the situation. You would go Otto against 1, 2, and 3 when Robertson seems to fit that case a little bit more. So yeah, it was just very, very odd, to say the least. Very odd.
I agree. And you know what? This is a good time, 34 minutes in, to take a break. We're going to come back, talk about some things that we're not worried about, some things that we are worried about. with regards to our New York Mets. Chris Ferraro saying, like the video. Yes, if you like what you're listening to, what you're watching, hit that thumbs up button because it helps out our algorithm. If you're watching for the first time and you've never been a viewer or a listener with us before, this break is just a quick 10-second ad spot that we need for the audio version of this show. So it's John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez. It's Till Mets Do Us Part, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. We'll be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back. John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez, Till Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, and of course, watching on YouTube is the best way to interact and become a full-fledged member of the show, just like so many folks have been doing. Chris and Patty and Shay, real, commenters who are always here. Stevie Mack going through the list. So many folks and so many more. We get new commenters and viewers, it seems, every single week, and we really, really, really appreciate all of that. But we know not everybody. How come the Mets can't get that scrub Winker out due to Babe Ruth against the Mets? That's fair. Hey,
just trade for him.
Winker might be on the Mets before you know it. I'm serious.
I
think there's a good chance Winker's on the Mets at some point this season. Anyway, if you can't watch us live, it's all good. As soon as we end the broadcast, this show will live forever on our YouTube channel, which is called Till Mets Do Us Part, which is why you should subscribe and turn notifications on so that you never miss an episode regardless. And if you can't do any of that, you can listen to the show, an audio version of the show starting tomorrow morning, wherever it is you get your podcast, on your way to school, on your way to work, while you're at the gym, while you're walking your dog, whatever it is you could be doing, and you're like, I can't watch, but I do want to hear John scream into a microphone, then that's fine. And Ibby's measured takes while John screams into a microphone. We can do that. We can do all of that too. Ibby, that said, sorry. And following it up by saying he'll bet 067 on the Mets. Book it.
It's true. He would.
He would. He would. He'd be the worst signing ever. He would be so bad on the Mets. Ibby, another guy that I'm worried about, and I tweeted this twice in the first week. I don't think this is reactionary. I am worried about, and I'm trying to separate my feelings about the trickle-down effect from the isolated player that I'm about to mention. Eduardo Escobar has not started in 2 days because he's hitting 100. He has 7 Ks. He looks terrible at the plate. 2 hits, 1 run, hasn't knocked in any runs. And I know he started badly last year, but then in August of last season, he was a big part of the reason we were able to keep pace with the Braves for as long as we did. In August and September, he was arguably our best hitter, certainly one of the best hitters. So I think he's still got it in him. And we talked about how, hey, he's a professional. He's put up a lot of big numbers over his career. He's hit 30-plus home runs and all this stuff, blah, 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 switch hitter, all these things. I'm trying to divorce this decision from Beatty, but I've watched every inning of every game so far. And when I watch Eduardo Escobar, and this is what I tweeted, I think his bat speed is gone. I do not see a guy that can catch up to a tough fastball. And so what I'm watching is a guy who is overcommitting on breaking balls because he's overcompensating. And he either looks behind on a fastball or way out in front. He's having a lot of non-competitive at-bats. He's having a lot of at-bats where he'll put himself in a hitter's count, or he'll put himself in a position where maybe he's even in the count. He gets a fastball down the middle and he fouls it back, and then he flails at a breaking pitch down and away. It's been the recipe for Eduardo Escobar. And I understand that when players are slumping, that's kind of the recipe, right? Like even Pete, as good as Pete is, when Pete is struggling, he's too quick. Keith Hernandez always says, when you're in a slump, you're never too late, you're too early. That's how this works. And you see Pete starting too early, flailing at breaking balls in the dirt. But the thing is, I'm not worried about Pete's bat speed as a reason for it. That's a slump. With Escobar, having watched him now for a full season and this first early slate of games, Ibby, I think Eduardo Escobar's days as a starting player are over. Honestly, I do.
I'm with you because I'm watching his at-bats and I'm seeing a guy like everything you're saying is spot on. Like feels like he's guessing, feels like he's overcompensating, feels like he's swinging too hard, too early. Like everything that you're saying is right. And I'm just looking at a guy, and it's hard to say, like, it's hard to say this part, but it's kind of what I'm seeing because any player, and Keith talked about it on, in the booth as well, talking about, knowing when you have someone breathing down your neck. He talked about the times that he knew that somebody was breathing down his neck as he got older and longer in the tooth in his career. So I was curious to see how Escobar would start the season, knowing that a majority of people knew, or a majority of people felt that, the starting third baseman should be Brett Baty, and other young players should be up on this team, and you should be relegated to a DH platoon spot. Like, I wanted to see how does a player respond to that, and I'm watching a guy clearly playing, in my opinion, as if he knows that the heat is on him, that the hot breath is on his neck from somebody that's really, bringing it up the rear in terms of like, look, if I don't get this done, if I do not get if I don't wake up, I'm going to be benched. Like, that's the way it's coming across. And he's not able to get out of his own way. Like, if I'm going to compare it to someone, it's hard to bring up this guy's name again because he's gone now, but we watched Darren Ruff not be able to get out of his own way. And I feel like I'm watching Eduardo Escobar not being able to get out of his own way or get out of his own head and really put bat to the ball. Like, I'm not seeing it right now. And when you have situations like I joked about in the beginning, where you're watching other teams like the Brewers that happened to us, you're watching the Cardinals, you're watching these other guys, and they bring up these young players and they're performing and they're helping teams win ball games. We just watched the Brewers bring up the likes of Terang and Joey Weimer, and they go out and they beat the Mets. Like, they're a big part of why they won those games. I'm watching Brett Baty, thumb inflammation aside for the next couple of days, like that aside, going down in the minors and tearing the cover off the ball with 7 hits, multiple home runs, and not having a ball hit under, exactly, there's the numbers right there, and not having a ball being hit less than 105 miles an hour off the bat. Like, I'm saying, this guy should be here. So I refuse to subscribe to the idea that this guy is going to be kept down until June 3rd. There is no freaking chance that happens. Injuries aside, there is no freaking chance that happens. Now, do I think he's going to be the first guy called up in this entire situation? I don't. I think Mark Vientos is going to be the first guy that's called up. That's the way I think it's going to go. But if there's no way, if Baty isn't up before May or at the start of May, like, I will be completely floored if he continues to be this type of hitter down low and this offense kind of sputters, specifically towards the back end of this lineup. There's no chance that he's not brought up. But in terms of, to bring it back to Escobar, I feel as though he feels the pressure, and I don't want to say he's rolling over, but I think he realizes that he's trying to do better, but to your points before, he just can't.
Yeah, I don't think he can. And a lot of people in the comments agreeing with us will bring it up. Shay said, agreed, John, he's free swinging. Aunt Rivera saying, yeah, dude is swinging a friggin' 200-pound bat right now. Carlos Ortiz just saying, swing and miss. That's kind of been what he does. That's been his whole MO lately. Patty in NYC saying, yes, agreed, Ibby. And then somebody, Shay says, I said he gets until the end of April to find himself, but he continues at this rate. I give it 1 or 2 more weeks tops. Beatty is raking. And then somebody, and then Shay saying it sucks because he's a good guy, he's a class act, but through the Correa free agency, Beatty's spring training, it's just a matter of time. And that's the thing. I don't think he is capable of it anymore, Ibby. That's the thing. Yeah. Last year, I thought when I watched it, I said, this is a guy who had a bad start to the season and then kind of couldn't get out of his own way. His start to his season was so bad, the numbers were tanked. It was kind of like Lindor's first year. Lindor had such a bad first 6 weeks that no matter what he did, his numbers kind of continued to look bad. Now, I think Escobar's was worse last week, right? Like, I think last year, I think Escobar's season was worse, but he got up to such a bad start that he couldn't get out of his own way. The numbers always look messy. And then he would have 1 good game and he had 4 more bad games until mid-August rolled around. And then all of a sudden, boom, he became the player that we thought we were signing. I just don't think this year that he has it in him anymore. I really don't. And I don't want to be reactionary off of just one weeks worth of at-bats. But
Right.
listen, man, if you're going to Guillorme twice in a row on a game where you must win, and look, Guillorme had an amazing play today at third base. He seemingly always does. I think Guillorme is a winning player on a winning team. But I think Guillorme is exactly what he is. He's a poor man's Jeff McNeil. He's a bat-to-ball kind of guy. No power. Unbelievable glove. I think any winning franchise would want a guy like Guillorme on your team. Ideally, though, Ibby, unless he's in one of those streaks, and he's done it before, where he's hitting 400, and you're like, screw it, let's run him out there 2 days in a row. Ideally, you don't want to play Guillorme 2 days in a row.
Right.
Certainly not in the same position. Now, if you said, hey, the Mets won the first 2 games, and now, Guillorme played third base one day, and now, after a big road trip, they're going to give Lindor the day off, they're going to play Guillorme at short. That's different. In a game where the Mets very much wanted to win, you could tell by how they played and what they tried to do and all the machinations to come home with a winning road trip and a good taste in their mouth. They should not be going to Guillorme back-to-back days at third base. That just shows you, and it's not an indictment on Guillorme, because God knows he's done nothing wrong, but it just shows you how little faith they have right now in Escobar. And look, I think the Correa thing was it wasn't really an indictment on Escobar. I think it was, hey, we have a chance to go get a star player. So let's go get him. We'll figure out Escobar later, right? Because I think if it was such a huge indictment on Escobar, Beatty would already be here. Like, I think if that ship had sailed, if they felt like it was over, I think Beatty would have been here today, start of the season. But for me, so I don't think that they believe it. But I believe it. I think he's done, man. I do. I really done as a full-time player.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. Like, even when we were championing for Beatty to be playing, brought up, break camp, starting third base, it was like I never wanted to get rid of Eduardo Escobar. Like, I think he is an important part of this team in a multitude of ways. It's just I think he should be a part-time player right now, and it's really showing out that way. But I also said why I thought in the beginning of our talk when it came to who was going to break camp a couple episodes ago, I had said that, look, I think this team is going to opt for the veteran approach because they want to give these guys a shot before they make a true call and say, okay, we're going to play the kids. I think they wanted to see if we can afford to buy some more time, let them get at bats, do what they got to do. If the older guys can do their thing and break out and start off strong, then we're good. We're set. And then we can call the kids up and then they can provide relief and guys can get blows on certain days. It's like, that was always my thought process of how they wanted to go about it. But if it's going to continue this way, and I'm going beyond Escobar, I'm talking about the bottom half of the lineup where it's kind of feels like the bottom half is just very if I'm going to describe it, it's just like very and I had said from the jump, you call up Beatty, you let Beatty learn now, you let him go from Jump Street because it lengthens the lineup in a good way. And that's what's missing right now. There's length missing from this lineup because I feel as though it kind of falls off a cliff once you go past Jeff McNeil. That's kind of where I am.
Ibby, let me just ask you one question.
Yeah.
And it's who's the left-handed power hitter on the Mets? There isn't one. Unless you're counting on Vogelback, right? Because Vogelback does hit the ball hard, and he is left-handed, and he has a ton of pop against right-handed. But there's no left-handed power hitter. That's the biggest case for me for Brett Beatty. Yeah. Jeff McNeil, unbelievable hitter. Brandon Nimmo, off to a great start. Very good player. I think his on-base percentage coming into today was like 480. It took an 0 so it's down, obviously. But, look, Brandon Nimmo, great leadoff hitter. I never thought Brandon Nimmo would hit lefties the way that he has learned to hit lefties, and kudos to him for doing it. Unbelievable. And both of those guys have a little bit of pop. I think Nimmo can hit 15 home runs. I think McNeil can hit 12 home runs or whatever. Mr. Met is the left-handed power hitter from Keith Blacknick, man behind the scenes over at the QBC. But yeah, there isn't one. So to me, that's the biggest reason to go and use a guy like Beatty every single day. Because if Beatty ever does it, look, I think his ceiling is higher than this, Ibby, but if Beatty hits 240 and hits 25 bombs, he's going to be second or third on the team in home runs.
Right.
Alonso's going to hit the most. Lindor's going to be next. And then it would be Beatty at 25 bombs. Like, they don't have enough power. They don't. They simply do not. And it's wild because Shay's saying he figured he could slide to DH if anything, but now with the bat speed, I'm not so sure of that anymore, talking about Escobar. And that brings me to what we're talking about now. Ibby, when you look at the landscape, we said, well, this wasn't a Beatty Escobar conversation last week when the season was starting. It was like a Beatty, Tommy Pham, Beatty, Ruff, Beatty, LaCastro. Well, you know what? Again, small sample size, but Tommy Pham has shown some pop. Tommy Pham has shown that he can be a productive part of a platoon at DH and get a spot start here or there in the outfield. And I think that he might be because his track record has shown that. Mm-hmm. And Daniel Vogelbach has shown that his legs are healthy. Again, neither one of these guys lighting up the stat sheet, and I think it's kind of crazy that that's our entirety of our DH, but it has become a conversation for me very quickly, one that I said adamantly a week ago was not between Escobar and Beatty. Now it's between Escobar and Beatty because I just don't think he can do it anymore.
Yeah, and it's and the crazy thing too, like what you're saying, like I think Beatty, at least if he came up, based off my bold predictions, I said that he would hit somewhere between like 18 and 20 homers. I think I had him at 18 homers, but even that would be, I still think that would probably end up being third on this team as constructed at the moment. But yeah.
You said Tommy Pham had 17 home runs last year. Right. That would have led our outfield.
It would have led the outfield. That would have.
I hope Tommy Pham hits 17 home runs
I hope he
this
does
year.
too. I hope he does too. But also, like when it comes to Beatty, the thing I like about him is he's shown it throughout the spring and he continues to show it down low right now. He puts bat to ball. He doesn't force, like he doesn't try to be a pull hitter. He's not like, if the ball is pitched a certain quadrant of the zone, he's going with the pitch, and he's showing that he has power to the gaps and things like that. So he's just a guy that fits the mold of this team with what the reason why I was so confused as to why he wasn't called up is because his profile fits this team to a T. Correct. He can provide power in the 18 to 25 range, at least for now. We'll see how he develops over his career, but like I would think anywhere between 18 and 25 is kind of that sweet spot for him. But also he puts bat to ball and he sprays the ball around the field. Very similar to the profile of a majority of this lineup, sans Pete. Like you look at everyone else, they kind of spray the ball around the field. Dude. They can hit 15 to 20 home runs. Like it kind of fits. I think you would want that.
Right, especially from the left side because they don't really have anybody to do that from the left side because maybe Nimmo, but McNeil's a different kind of player. I think if McNeil sits there and tries to hit home runs, I think McNeil can hit 20. I think McNeil can probably hit 25 if he really tried to do it, but he's not going to try to do it because that's not the kind of player he should be. But when I look at it, to me, Beatty is Conforto. Like he's what they thought they were going to get with Conforto. And quite frankly, I said they should have let Conforto walk, and I'm happy that they did and all this stuff. But, Ibby, they never replaced what Conforto should have been. Right. That's the problem. They never went out and got a replacement, whether he was underwhelming or not, and he was. They never went out and replaced Conforto, a left-handed hitter with power. They never went out and got that guy again. I don't understand why. And I also think when you look at it, sometimes there's a need for these other guys, like these other kind of guys. I said it in the year when we still had Syndergaard and Stroman in the rotation with Jake. I said, not everybody needs to be like Jake and just go out there and go about their business and come out to Simple Man. I like the fact that Syndergaard was a little bit nutty. I like the fact that Stroman was flashy. Take the off-the-field stuff aside. I like the fact that Stroman had bravado and Stroman had a strut to him. because you need all these kinds of players, I think, to make a team. That's why I've always liked Javi Baez on this team. I like the fact, Lindor, super nice guy. Pete, super nice guy. Javi Baez, fucking
bit of a dick.
rowing the boat. He's just like, one day he was just like, I don't like Amir Garrett. I'm going to make it my life's work to destroy this man in every way. Sometimes you need a guy like that.
I agree.
And so I think sometimes you need these different kinds of players. You need different kinds of personalities. And I think right now, this team is a little ho-hum. I think this team is like, I don't know. I think if you're not going to, and I'm not saying that Beatty's that guy, right? I don't think Beatty is Javi Baez attitude.
No.
But I think your point about wanting to go with the veterans and have this veteran club, I think that you need to bring in the youth and let them inject something else into this team, because right now it's not there. That's the one thing I opened up saying, don't worry about it. But that's the one thing I'm a little worried about, because that everybody's just like, this guy, Mr. Smiles, and no, Lindor smiles, and then no, Nimmo smiles, and Pete's aw shucks, and Eduardo Escobar is such a nice guy, and and everybody's like, Jeff McNeil's a dick. I want somebody to throw their helmet down. I want, give me a little Paul O'Neill.
Don't tell Wrecker that.
You need that. Wrecker's gonna be pissed. But you need that. That's why people are like, Max is a psycho. Yeah, I need Max to be a maniac. I need that. You need some of these guys. And that's where I think the bullpen is suffering too. You're just a bunch of generic faces. They're just guys. Where's we need the trumpets. We need the flair. You need a little bit of that, I think, over the course of a baseball season. I do.
I was actually searching for trying to paint my feelings, and you kind of like opened up my thought process by everything you just said there. And I was thinking about before, I was like I'm not worried. I'm not, but I was saying, like, I feel like something is just, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, something is just missing. And I didn't know how to like really word it or really put it across. But with what you just said, I was just like it's lacking the juice in the sense where I feel like we haven't had it in a long time, where it, like since Pete came up, kind of like where you bring up a talent and they interject themselves right away, and like they establish an identity and they become part of the team. And it's like you have that youth, and it's like, and we know that this team is a very veteran-based ball club. It's an older club, but I think that if you interject that juice, where it's a Beatty and here comes Vientos who's DHing, or if Francisco Alvarez comes up second half of the year sometime, like if you do things like that, I think it adds a lot more to this team, and then it reinvigorates things, and then you can keep, and then once everything starts really rolling, and then you get those guys a part of it, then they start getting into it. It's like it creates an entire environment that I think would be great for a younger player to really assimilate into. And I think that's kind of where I was. I was like, I feel like there's just a little bit of juice that's lacking somewhere. The injuries haven't helped. That series right there didn't help. But that's kind of where I feel like just like a small something is missing. And I think that it got sapped from this team when they put Beatty down. That's kind of where I am in terms of that.
I agree with you. And a lot of people in the comments are agreeing. And obviously people have, I mentioned some polarizing guys, and people are going to have different opinions. Like Patty in NYC said, I like Stroman and Javi. And then Keith saying Baez was a bad influence on Lindor. And I think that's partially fair. If you consider that to be a bad influence, I think you could draw lines to that for sure. But I also think, and then Keith follows it up by saying best teams always have been a mix of veterans and young guys. Mm-hmm. So and Carlos Ortiz saying you need the bad guy, you need Razor Ramon. You need him. Like, Christopher Pope saying Liam Hendricks rage. I think some of that stuff. And then Keith saying, again, just jumping back into the comments, need Ray Knight, Wally Backman type of attitude. And I know that those are different kinds of ball players that people say like don't exist anymore. But then Shay says something great right here. Boom. We need David Wright throwing away Noah Syndergaard's lunch type of player passion. Listen, David Wright was the ultimate nice guy.
Right.
The ultimate captain nice guy. But even he did some stuff like that. You know what I mean? And look, teams, to your point, this series didn't help. The way it started didn't help. I always tell people, and this is what that dude quote tweeted at me from, weeks and weeks ago and months ago, what I said when I opened the show, teams look listless when they don't hit. When teams don't hit, they look like they don't care. They look apathetic. They look, it just looks boring. It's boring baseball. So obviously the Mets are trying to win. Obviously they have a lot of really good ball players on this team, but I do think they're a little vanilla. I think they're a little bland, and I think they could have used, that's one of the reasons, not the main reason, but one of the reasons why I wanted Correa. I wanted a little bit of push. I wanted to be a little bit of let's really rile it up a little bit. And, keep saying Wright was the nice guy in front of folks, but he laid down the law in the locker room. And that's the thing. I'm sure the Mets have some guy that does that.
Of course. Yeah.
I'm sure Scherzer does it because, and I know they say a pitcher can't do it. A pitcher like Scherzer can, because he transcends the position he plays and he's so respected. He's going to walk into the Hall of Fame. But I just think I don't know, man. It's too late to go out and get Correa. Right? It's too late. You can't get Javi Baez on this team. You can't go trade for anybody who might be, that kind of spark plug or lightning rod. But you can offset it by bringing up Beatty and bringing up Vientos, two guys who I don't think have anything left to prove in the minor leagues. I don't think they do.
If there's one thing I will say, and this is why I wanted them up here from the jump, is because the conversation we're having right now is fine. The conversation we're having is level-headed and it's thinking things out and saying, this is why I think this and this is why I think it can work. Whereas other people on Twitter or wherever it is that you put your thoughts out into the atmosphere, into the environment, whatever, a lot of people are going to do what they did to Vientos last year when he came up and he failed and they were begging for him and they thought he was going to be some sort of savior. Yeah. Same thing is going to happen here. And that's what I don't like, where a guy is going to get called up and the second he pops up with the bases loaded, the second he strikes out in a big spot, they go, oh, this guy stinks. Well, he's a nobody. They're going to put all this pressure and this thought in their head where they're like, this guy, this is the one. This is the guy who's going to provide everything we need. Everything's going to go right and this and that. It's like, that's the one thing I really didn't want to see. And I hope it doesn't happen. I hope they just come up and they integrate properly. But again, this is Mets fans, and that's not how it goes. So the second Vientos comes up and gets blown away by 3 fastballs, he's going to get booed out of the building on Twitter because they think, oh, this guy stinks. He should have hit a home run there. It's like, guys, it's not that freaking easy. Oh my God. But that's like my one area of concern, because I know that there are other people like us, people in the chat, people that follow us or whatever, or even other areas of Twitter where they are a little bit more level-headed and understand the process of baseball, but other people, not so much. And when these guys get called up, they're going to think that they're automatically going to be superstars. They think that they're going to be the next Ronald Acuna or Juan Soto or like that type of caliber of player. Mm-hmm. And, if it doesn't happen right away, because that's the society that we live in now, if you don't get something right away, me, now, then people are just like, well, I want something new. I want, who else is there? Call up Alvarez, call up whoever else. Like, that's kind of where it's going to go. And I really hope that it doesn't, but I still stay with the point that I was originally making. Some juice, a little extra, just to really, really put it together, I think. And I think that Beatty more so fits that mold, but I do believe that Vientos will be the first guy called up to fill in from a power perspective, DH spot, if it doesn't really formulate more for the likes of potentially Fanboy. I think he can stick, but like a Vogelback, a type like that.
Well, looking back at the comments, Keith saying, how come no one is mentioning Mauricio? I think Mauricio might have some attitude. Patty and NYC saying Mauricio, in my opinion, is definitely a player, would be a good addition. And then Shay saying he definitely is. I agree. I don't think the front office feels that way, though, to give him the call up before others in AAA. The thing is, yeah, I agree with that. I would say when you look at the 4 top prospects or the 4 prospects closest to the major leagues, I think you kind of got to split them in half. I think Vientos and Beatty just have an easier track to the major leagues. One, Vientos has played a ton of games at AAA and really has nothing left to prove. Yes. Beatty, I think, is emerging as a, kind of, I don't want to say super prospect, and people are going to think I'm comparing him to Bryce Harper. He's becoming the type of prospect that you see and go, this guy really doesn't have much more that he needs to do. I think this guy is doing everything that that warrants a call up at this point.
He comes across as a player that can really, like, based off the numbers I said before, he really comes across as a guy that can go 18 to 25 home runs, 75 to 85 RBIs. Like, that's a good ball player right now. You want that in a lineup. That's how he comes across.
I agree. And then when you look at the other two guys, I think with Alvarez, it's more of just a waiting game, like you said. We kind of said, look, it's a veteran staff. You got a player in his first year coming over from Japan, language barrier. The whole knock on Alvarez is, his ability to be a catcher, whether that's fair, unfair, accurate, inaccurate, whatever. I just think there's a little bit more of a waiting game for him. Plus, he didn't really light the world on fire in spring training. He didn't force anybody's hand, so it's easier to hedge there. The Mets went out, and I know he pinched his calf a little bit, but the Mets went out and got a good hitting catcher that is a good platoon partner for Tomas Nido in the short term and Omar Narvaez, and they bought themselves time. They did at catcher, Ibby, what they didn't do in the bullpen, which is why I think it's strange. They went out and did it at catcher when they have the best prospect in baseball at catcher. They didn't do it in the bullpen when they were hoping that Montez Dioka would be their seventh inning guy. You know what I mean? That was a curious sort of thought process for me. And then with Mauricio, I think, look, Mauricio was a top prospect. He worked his way all the way down, worked his way all the way back up, won the MVP in winter ball, had a lights out spring training, is hitting the ball really well now. He's got a ton of power. He's growing into his body. But I think with Mauricio, the knock is twofold. One, he hasn't spent a lot of time in AAA yet, so they want to kind of see if he can adjust, because his pet peeve or his negating factor has always been the fact that he chases balls and he strikes out a lot. So I think they want to see him up against some higher tier pitching and see if he can kind of cut down on chasing a bit. The other thing is, he's a shortstop. Where is he going to play? Now, I know he's toyed around with third, but if you're calling up Vientos, he's not coming up to play. Calling up Beatty, he's not coming up to play third. He's certainly not coming up and taking the place of Jeff McNeil. I think with Mauricio in AAA right now, I would be playing Mauricio in left field every single day, because you know what? He could come up, if he proves that he can play left field, he could come up in the middle of the year, play left field, and then all of a sudden, Mark Canha's on the bench. And that's fine. I don't think Mark Canha's the kind of guy or Mark Canha can platoon with them. You're not talking about having a guy like Kyle Schwarber out in left field where you're like, what do we do? We couldn't possibly sit Mark Canha. He's such a professional hitter. I think they need to start working on that now. Every time I look at the AAA lineup and I see Mauricio playing shortstop, I'm like, why? Right. Why? He's not going to play shortstop. Lindor signed for 10 years. Yeah. He's never played shortstop, ever.
Yeah. I would say that I kind of feel the way that some comments are being put out there. I think Shay said it when it comes to Mauricio. I've always felt this way. I didn't want to really shit on the guy when he was doing well during spring training, but I still have always, and I've maintained a feeling that while I think Mauricio can be a player at the next level, I'm not taking that away from him. I've always just felt that I never thought he fit because of the lack of position, and he's blocked a multitude of ways. And when you hear him say, when he was asked the question, he was like, hey, if you're asked, straight up, like, what position do you feel most comfortable with? Through his translator, he said third base. It's like, well, that's kind of not going to work because Beatty's going to be playing third base. And it's like,
they give Beatty the left field glove.
I mean,
the Mets are going to have openings at third, in left, at catcher, backup first base, DH. Like,
I feel that Mauricio, and I hope that if I'm proven wrong, it's great, because that means he comes up and he provides something big. But I kind of do feel that if pieces are moved to better this team, specifically towards the deadline, I think Mauricio is going to be a part of those packages. I do.
I think that's possible too. And look, if the Mets go out and they trade for some kind of stud, player, I can't think of one right now because I'm
but
in this.
The point in general.
If the Mets go out and get a full-time DH and they have to include Mauricio in the deal, right? Or if the Mets go out and they, if Cookie isn't it and Quintana never comes back and the Mets have to go get a starter, and they go out and they use Mauricio to go get a starting pitcher or whatever, or even if they use him to go get a cost-controlled relief pitcher. I got no problem with that. But I do think that I think that they should be showing what else he can do. And Shea saying they blocked him at the MLB level more times than I have certain people blocked on Mets Twitter this week.
That's good.
That's fair.
Good.
Look, Ibby, the bottom line is this. I think there are some causes for concern or just raising an eyebrow. Like, I think there are some things to raise an eyebrow at. Not concern now, 7 games in. But I see some things right now that I think may become a problem.
They could spiral. Yes, things
like
certain things could definitely spiral. Yes,
the bullpen, this kind of lack of oomph that the team seems to have, like that could be a problem if this team gets off to a bad start because it's harder to dig yourself out.
Correct.
So, I see things that could be problems that aren't necessarily problems right now. I think if you're overreacting to 7 games and a 3-4 record when the Phillies have barely, I don't think the Phillies have won a game. I think, the Minnesota Twins were undefeated till today. The Minnesota Twins led by Carlos Correa and Joey fucking Gallo. You know what I mean? So I don't think you really need to get up in arms 7 games into the season, but I do think there are some things. There are some things that, maybe if we're talking about this middling team in June,
different story.
Yeah, I think it's different. So before we get out of here, you got any final thoughts?
I wanted to pull something up real quick. Obviously there's 2 things I would say. On the talk about the bullpen and things, I didn't really get a chance to throw this one in. Just talking about the Syracuse Mets and just looking for potential options. Last night, Bubby Rossman, Eric Orzi, Grant Hartwig, and Jimmy Yacobonis all did well. So those are some names that you might hear potentially being called up over the next handful of days, or depending on how things shake out with the pen, if there are more injuries, looking for fresh arms, just basically busting people back and forth. If those things were to happen, those are some names that you would look out for. And finally, non-Met related. I can kind of make it Met related, but did you see the stats when it came to our favorite Oakland Athletics? Did you see that one?
Oh yeah, there was 47 people at the game yesterday.
JJ Cooper on Twitter, of the 13 AAA games yesterday, 11 of those 13 drew more fans than the Oakland A's announced attendance of 3,407 people. Okay. 4 more than doubled the A's attendance. The Syracuse Mets, our AAA Syracuse Mets, drew just under 6,000 for their game last night. Just to put things into a little bit of perspective when it comes to people, when they put out tweets talking about teams that finish in the green and finish in the red when it comes to money, everyone's like, oh man, the Mets finished $139 million in the red, but look, the Oakland Athletics made $27 million. Yeah, because they're not fucking paying anybody and no one's showing up.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have the Oakland A's Cleveland game on right now. It
just
ended a couple minutes ago. It's the only game on, so I have it on in the background. Yeah, the Oakland A's are a despicable franchise. It's gross. And you factor in, I know they cover up, they have it set up different, but that's a football stadium that holds 80,000 people. So yes. 3,000 people in there is literally empty.
Basically every bowl except the bottom now is tarped off.
The last thing I will say before we get out of here is Jeff McNeil needs to not ever again on this team bat 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th. Now, he's not going to touch 8th or 9th, but he has touched 6th and 7th, and I think that is insane. I understand he brings a lot of flexibility because he can kind of hit anywhere, but when you're a team that is looking for consistent offense, I think they might need to get a little bit more creative, Ibby, with some of the things that they do to get Jeff McNeil more at bats. Mm-hmm. Jeff McNeil should not be in the lower third of any lineup. He should not, unless it's the Team USA lineup.
I got a thought, but yeah, I want you to finish.
I just think that's completely absurd. Now, I understand Nimmo's going to lead off, and you're going to go then to Marte, and you're going to go to Lindor, you're going to go to Pete, and that seems like it locks it up. Well, there are ways that you can move that around. I would consider moving Lindor up to 2, McNeil up to 3, Marte down to 5. I think that's not a bad machination. I want to keep Pete in the 4 spot because I think he's the only guy with pop, that kind of pop, and I think he's a prototypical 4 hitter. But I just think it's ridiculous. And if you don't want to change that top 4, don't change him. Just hit McNeil 5th. That he's going to drive in runs. I don't want to see Mark Canha and Daniel Vogelback and Tommy Pham batting 5th, getting more at bats than Jeff McNeil, who can hit 330. It's crazy. Okay. It's ridiculous.
No, I'm with you on that. And I think it goes hand in hand. Like my thought on it is, I think it goes hand in hand with what I was saying before about how that bottom half of the lineup becomes such a whole that you basically want to break things up. And I think that the potential thought process is if they're, and I'm not saying I agree with it, I'm just saying what I think that they're kind of going with is because the bottom half is so bad, we plug Jeff in here. So it kind of allows us to turn the lineup over more times than not, as opposed to putting, 4 in a row where it's whoever it may be. If Pham's down there and the catcher, and then you got Guillorme, it's like, you don't want to, basically lose a half inning. So I kind of think that's my thought that as to why they might do it. But I've said to you multiple times on the show that I think that Jeff McNeil should be batting 5th because he creates traffic on the base paths, and him behind Pete makes a lot of sense because if a guy's on and then Pete rips a double, he's on second. Well, now Jeff, I don't care how slow Pete is. I know Jeff can find a gap and he can put the ball in play, and you can have guys on the corners or you can have an RBI. Like, it makes a lot of sense. As opposed to, I am a Mark Canha fan, but I think it makes more sense to have Jeff McNeil in a bigger spot as opposed to Mark Canha. I'd rather roll the dice with Canha in the spot that Jeff is constantly moved about, because I think Canha is a good hitter to put back the ball, but I'd much rather risk it with him in that Jeff McNeil spot and let Jeff be in a more prominent spot within the lineup.
That's how I feel about it. I understand your logic, and it's not to dump on Mark Canha. I like Mark Canha. I know I've said some things like, Mauricio could displace it. It's the truth. You know what I mean? Like, he's a good player. McNeil's a better player. I want McNeil to get more at bats. I want McNeil to be in more prominent spots. And it's not about, ego or like, oh, this will be great if he's in this spot. It's like, no, look at what you have. And somebody just said, Shay said, we're a bully offense. Once we're on top, we add on to our leads. And I think that you can do that when you have a team like the Mets have where the bottom is a little suspect. I think you want to hit people over the head with your best 5 guys every day. Right. And most of those guys are going to play every day. Nimmo, Lindor, Marte, Pete, and McNeil are going to play most of the time. So when they're all playing, they should bat 1 through 5 in some order, because I want those guys to get a ton of at-bats, and I want Pete to have actual protection. And I understand McNeil's not a power guy, but he will drive in runs because he's going to hit the ball a lot. And I just think he provides the best protection for Pete. If you didn't want to go that route, you could go Marte. I'm fine with that. Obviously, I wouldn't start dropping other guys down. Look, none of this would be a point. If we got Carlos Correa, you could hit McNeil 6th because you could hit, Correa 5th and McNeil 6th. Well, okay, fine. Now your lineup is longer. If you've got Beatty and Beatty comes up and Beatty's all of a sudden a stud and you want to hit him 5th and he's got pop, well, then you can hit McNeil 6th. But right now, the way it's shaken up, I don't want to see Pham and Vogelback and Canha and Escobar and, whoever, La Castro. Like, I don't want to see any of these guys hitting 5th. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, if you're going to do it this way, just stack the top. I understand wanting to spread guys out and trying to lengthen a lineup a different way, or you can just lengthen the lineup by calling up Brett Beatty and letting him fucking play. That's how a way you can lengthen the lineup as well. But you're trying to find other ways, so you sprinkle in guys that you think might be a little lesser by putting a better hitter or two, or a batter or two behind them to try and lengthen things. But look, at this point, just bat your best 5, 1 through 5, and then go from there, and then basically, hope for the best on the back end. But just call up Brett Beatty, please.
Listen,
please.
Most of the people, I don't want to go through them all now because we're way over time. A lot of people agreeing. Carlos Ortiz saying hit him 9th and have 2 leadoff hitters. I actually don't love that because He'll get less at bats even still.
Right.
But Ibby, hitting him 9th actually makes more sense than hitting him 7th.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Agree.
Like,
I agree.
if that's going to be your logic, he'll get the same number of at bats hitting 7th as 9th as he would hitting 9th on average. So then just hit him 9th, and then you lengthen the lineup in a different way because you turn the lineup over faster. I wouldn't do that, but I'd rather do that than hit him 7th. I think if you're hitting him 7th, you're like losing him in the shuffle between Narvaez and LoCastro and Pham and Vogelback. Like, no, that's gross. I don't want to do that. I think it's ridiculous. Anyway, that is our show. Oh, a little
is that a true story? Is this a true story, or is this Keith staying on the jerseys?
Keith hates the black jerseys. I will say that. A little deviation. One of the biggest things that came out from Miami when Cohen sat with the 7 line is that Steve is souring on the black jerseys.
I don't know if that's true or not, or if this is just Keith because he hates the black jerseys. I don't know.
It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell because Keith hates the black jerseys. He hates the black jerseys. But Keith is a full-fledged member of the 7 line. Keith is connected with some folks, and he has some good sources for things like that. So I might believe that. I actually might. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, the black jerseys are here this year. Maybe when the Mets get those grotesque City Connect jerseys that are going to be terrible next year, maybe the black jerseys will go, the way of the dodo bird. I'm not sure. But for now, let's see what happens. It remains to be seen. I think we both tried to bring up the comment at the same time, cancel each other out. Keith said, it's true. Kurt Angle, it's true. It's damn true. Anyway, guys, that has been our show. Ladies and gentlemen, just exhale. We have a day off from Mets baseball tomorrow, which means the Mets get back after it with a bunch of baseball in a row starting Friday, Saturday, Sunday against the Marlins. And then I believe the Padres come into town before the Mets come out here to the West Coast. I believe that's how it works.
Is it back-to-back home, or do they fly right back out? I thought they might have fly right back out. I'm not sure on that.
I think I don't know. You might be right.
I think they might be flying right. This is a hell of a schedule for the Mets to start. It really is. Not trying to use that as an excuse, but it is a hell of a schedule if that is the truth, where they're on the road for 7, come home for 3, and then back out to the West Coast. That's a little crazy, but relax, breathe. It's okay.
Breathe and like and subscribe.
Please do
thumbs up, subscribe, turn notifications on, all that fun stuff. Anyway, I'm John. He's Ibby. This is Till Mets Do Us Part, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. We'll see you all next week. Peace.